Okay, we're here with our student Luke to talk about representing data, and we're going to do it on a couple of different kinds, a few different kinds of number lines. Ready to go, Luke?
Yeah.
Okay, so first let's talk about dot plots, but before we even get to those, let's just look at some data here. Okay, so here we've gathered some data. It doesn't really matter what it's on, but we see we have a big long list of numbers here and another big long list of numbers here. To me, I look at that and I can't make heads or tail of it. I need to see it in like a graph or a chart or something. How about you?
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to create a dot plot here. One for the top set of data and one for the bottom set of data. And the way a dot plot works is you put one dot above the number, and if there's more than one, like with 71 here, you put two dots. With 2 here, it looks like there were 3 dots. So that's this data set right here. You can see that there were 2 71s. There's 171 there, 171 right there. So that's why there's 2 dots above the 71. You get it?
Yeah.
Okay, so now that you've done this, I don't know about you, but to me, this is way easier to look at than this big long list of numbers. How about for you?
Yeah.
And one of the things, you can tell a number of different things by looking at this. So first of all, you can see how spread out the data are. So this first one is kind of clumped around here. It's not super spread out, but it's this much spread out. The other one's about the same spread out, but it's clumped up higher. See if these numbers are kind of greater than these down here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So you can kind of compare the spread. These have about the same amount of spread. And you can roughly compare the measure of the data. So you can say, this one, the middle of the data, the median or the mean looks to be somewhere around 72 or 73. This one, the median or mean, where do you think it is roughly?
It's between like 60 or 69.
Yeah, somewhere in there. And you can actually go ahead and calculate the mean and the median. It doesn't show it on the chart, but you could add up all of these dots, for instance, or the numbers that you have up here. And you could then divide by the total number, and that would be your mean, right? Or you could put the numbers in order and find the middle number, and that would be your median. So you can find those things out. It doesn't show it right here on the graph, but dot plots are pretty useful for seeing all those things. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to talk about a completely different thing called a histogram. People use histograms in the real world a lot because it kind of just gives you a sense of how things fall into ranges. So let's look at what a histogram looks like. Okay, here's 2 examples. And you can see that the ranges here, this is hours per week of a study. This is a different study that also measured hours per week. And what they do is they say if somebody read 0 to 4 hours per week, if it was 1 or 3 or 4 or 0, it doesn't matter. They just put that person counts in this range. So it looks here that 1 person read 0 to 4 in this first study. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
About how many read this in this next range here?
10 people.
About 10 people, because you can see that, right? Now, it might be that all 10 read 6 hours per week, or all 10 read 8 hours per week. We don't really know, but we just put it into the range so we can kind of get a sense of what the ranges look like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So how would you compare these 2 data sets now that you're seeing them visually instead of the numbers written out like up here? What would you say about this data set versus this data set about how spread out they are?
Well, the first one, there's a lot of people on the 2 middles, and on the other one, it's really low. But on the second one, it has more spread. It's spread out more.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly right. So this is a histogram is a great way to see how spread out the data are. In fact, there's a few advantages to histograms. You can see the spread, and it's always in those ranges. And you can compare the spread really easily. This one's much more spread out than this one. And you can kind of compare the rough measure of center for these, but you don't really have the real center because, again, you don't know what the exact numbers are. But the center for this one is probably right around here. And the center for this one, we don't really know, but maybe it's a little bit higher. It's really spread out, but you could maybe say the center of this one looks to be a little bit higher. So that's what it shows is the spread in ranges. It doesn't show the minimum value because we don't know, like for here, if the minimum was 0 or 1, for instance. It doesn't show the maximum. It doesn't show the range because we don't know the exact numbers. And it doesn't show the specific points or the median or the mean. But it does give us a really good visual picture of the data.
Okay.
Now let's look at box plots, which actually show us a lot of information. So this is a box plot, and you can see here that it has a box, and then sometimes some people call this box and whisker, because these little things that stick out here are kind of like the whiskers. And then there's this point in the middle. Okay, so let's go ahead and explore this box plot and see what it's telling us. The first thing is that it shows us the median, the minimum, and the maximum. Okay, so for instance, what's the minimum value of this one?
85.
85. Okay, cool. And what is the maximum value of this one?
105.
Good. And what's the median of this data set?
94.
94. So you can really easily see what the minimum, maximum, and median are. So over here with the dot plots, you could see the minimum and maximum, but could you see the median really easily?
Not really.
Not really, right? You'd have to calculate the median. With the histogram, you definitely can't see the median. So this is really good for quickly being able to see the median and the maximum and the minimum. It's also really good for showing us a couple of other things. So what we do is we say, this is the median of the data, and then we take this half of the data, the lower half, and we find the median of that. So it's kind of the middle of the lower half. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then we have this fancy word for it called the lower quartile. And then we do the same thing with the upper half, and we call that the upper quartile. And that's a really good measure. It's called the interquartile range, this distance between the upper quartile and the lower quartile, that kind of gives us a really good idea of how spread out this data is. Okay? So that's a really important thing to understand is the interquartile range. You take the upper quartile, which is this value here, minus the lower quartile, which is this value here. So let's calculate that together. What's the upper quartile?
The upper quartile is 103.
103. And what's the lower quartile?
88.
88. So can you do mental math? What's 103 minus 88? That might be a little tough.
15.
15. Very good. So that's our interquartile range is 15. So sometimes you'll see a box plot like this that shows it's really spread out. Or other times you might see a box plot that looks like this. So just by glancing at it, which one of these box plots has the wider interquartile range, the greater interquartile range? The top one or the bottom one?
The top one.
The top one. You can see it like that, right, with a box plot. That's one of the reasons why box plots are so cool. Which has a higher median?
The second one.
The bottom one, right? Which has a higher maximum?
The top one.
And how about the higher minimum, or the lower minimum?
The bottom one.
The bottom one, okay? So these are, box plots are really great for giving you a lot of information. Let's just look at what we can see with the box plot. You can see all the details about center and spread. You see the median right there. You see the full spread from minimum to maximum, and you see the interquartile range. And you just see it just like that. And you can compare the center and the spread of two data sets really easily, just like you did with these two box plots. And it shows the median, minimum, maximum, the quartiles, and the interquartile range. The only thing that it doesn't show you is those specific points like you get over here on a dot plot. So sometimes a dot plot is better for that. And it doesn't show you the mean. You'd need to have the dot plot to be able to calculate the mean because you need to know the exact numbers of every single data point. And a box plot doesn't show you that. But a box plot does show you a lot of cool stuff, huh?
Yeah.
All right, great job.